You all okay? Good. Right, kia ora koutou. Welcome to our 2 p.m. media stand-up today on Tuesday, 14th of February. I'm Rachel Kelleher, one of the Deputy Controllers for Auckland Emergency Management. Today I have a number of speakers with me who are going to provide an update on their agency's response to this recent cyclone event. I have with me Deputy Mayor Desley Simpson, Fire and Emergency New Zealand Deputy National Commander Steph Rotarangi. I have New Zealand Defence Force Task Group Commander Colonel Mel Childs, Employers and Manufacturers Association Chief Executive Brent O'Reilly, Vector Chief Operating Officer for Electricity, Gas and Fibre Peter Ryan, Auckland Council Director of Regulatory Services Craig Hobbs, and Auckland Transport General Manager of Safety Stacey van der Putten. As you can see, we have a lot to get through this afternoon, so I'll just ask that if there are any questions that you pause those until the end and then we'll take them. And slightly differently than we have done, I will repeat the question you ask so that it's clearer for those listening what they are. I'd like to start off this afternoon by once again acknowledging our fire and emergency whānau during what we know has been a very difficult time for them and their families. Our hearts and thoughts are with you. The severity of the impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle continues to be felt, and this morning the New Zealand Government declared a national state of emergency. This will further assist in our response and recovery from this event, and we are grateful for the support and collaboration of effort that this declaration enables. The impacts to the west coast of the Auckland region have been considerable. Muriwai remains cordoned off by the police, and we echo their request for people to stay away from the area. But we're also mindful many other parts of the region have suffered as a result of last night's cyclone, including our residents over on Aotea Great Barrier. I'm now going to hand to our Deputy Mayor Desley Simpson to say a few words. Thank you, Rachel.
Good afternoon, everybody. I first want to say that our hearts go out to those in the West, especially those at Piha, Karikari and Muriwai. I would like to acknowledge the emergency services personnel, volunteers and community supporters who have worked through the night across the region to keep people safe or to help them to get somewhere safe. Again, my thanks go to fellow elected members who have in their own communities worked tirelessly supporting local responses. Everything from serving meals at civil defence centres to helping connect people with essential help and support, they've done it. Thank you, Team Auckland. As Rachel mentioned, another of our more isolated communities that got hit heavily last night was Aotea Great Barrier. This community of just over 3,000 residents has shown tremendous resilience throughout this response. We are sending our love and araha to you all right now as you embark on a significant clean-up event. Noting that we now have a national state of emergency, to those other regions throughout New Zealand that have been savaged overnight or continue to face major power and infrastructure issues, Auckland's thoughts are with you. The advice that I've been given is wind is still not our friend right now, but we will get through this together. Thank you. Back to you, Rachel.
I'm now going to hand over to Fire and Emergency New Zealand. Thanks, Steph.
Tēnā koutou katoa, I'm Steph Rotarangi, Deputy National Commander at Fire and Emergency. As has already been said, Tamaki Makaurau whānau are waking up to impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle and are still feeling those impacts. And firefighters continue to be extremely busy, both here and across the country, North Island in particular. We've logged just under 18,000 storm-related incidents in the prior 24 hours up to 2 p.m. We've seen a rapid increase in numbers to areas in the Hawke's Bay and Tairāwhiti, and calls for help to people in these regions. As our cyclone tracks down the country, our incidents are now starting to come in from Taranaki and Manawatu and Wanganui. Our priority remains the same, and we will prioritise the most urgent, life-threatening situations, such as people trapped in houses or where their safety is threatened. I'd like to thank you once again for keeping our 111 system for calls where life and safety is at risk and people urgently need our help. If I turn our minds to Muriwai and the incident that has unfolded there. Last night, our crew responded to a routine flooding call, and while they were investigating and undertaking their duties, a landslide occurred and 2 firefighters became trapped. One of our firefighters was rescued in the early hours of this morning and remains in hospital. Our second firefighter has not yet been found. Our crews are on scene at Muriwai and undertaking all tasks that can be done to improve our information and for them to get underway in a manner that is safe. What this looks like is deploying drones, working with New Zealand Police and Defence Force and Council on geotechnical advice for when it will be safe for our people to start searching again at this location. At this time, I have no further updates, and for privacy reasons and out of respect to our families, we will not be confirming any names as yet. Our focus, as you can imagine, is on our well-being of our crews and our whānau that have been involved in this incident, and I'm taking all tasks we can to improve the likelihood of a positive outcome for all involved. If I may just turn our mind to Hawke's Bay and Tairāwhiti in particular, many people have been cut off and need our assistance. Helicopters are trying to rescue people but are being hampered by high winds, as has already been pointed out. We have people trapped on roofs, and we are still in the process of undertaking full awareness and restoring radio and cellular contact with our firefighters. While our communities across the North Island face such challenging times, we appreciate all the support that we are getting and the work that our crews are doing at this time. Thank you very much, New Zealand.
We also have Colonel Mel Childs, who's here to give us an update on the New Zealand Defence Force operations.
Ahi ahi mari e koutou. The New Zealand Defence Force has personnel from across our services of Navy, Army and Air Force, all responding to the multiple events that are occurring concurrently across the North Island. We're working hard alongside our partners, our partner agencies, civil defence and emergency authorities to respond to the community needs, be it evacuations, moving of emergency supplies and requests for help. We are actively responding to requests for assistance. With the announcement of the national state of emergency, we have placed personnel in units across Defence on a shortened notice to move and response time. We will be able to assist civil authorities with responses in different regions, with personnel being sent to where they're needed most. We are currently assisting with efforts to evacuate residents from the Esk Valley in Napier. 4 Unimog trucks and an NH90 helicopter are moving to Napier today to help. Another NH90 helicopter task will occur today, weather permitting, to support Fire and Emergency New Zealand to relocate their staff and to evacuate residents from Dargaville. In closing, I have some positive news. The person on the yacht that was adrift overnight has been rescued and is safely on board HMNZS Te Mana. Further updates will be provided, but what I can say for now is that the person is safe and being looked after by our wonderful crew of Te Mana. This was a joint search and rescue effort involving our personnel and a seaboat from Te Mana and the crew of a Northland rescue helicopter. So a great result. Nō reira, ngā mihi nui.
I'm now going to just move to the rapid impact assessment process that we have underway. Auckland Council building inspectors have been out at Muriwai today conducting rapid building assessments to assess the safety of properties. It is quite a challenging environment for them to be working in, and as we've already heard, they need to be working in a way that is safe for all involved. I'm now going to hand over to our Director of Regulatory Services, Craig Hobbs, to give an update on the work that Council's building inspectors have underway. And I just thought I'd mention, we've had the wonderful Ian McCormick standing up in many of these briefings, and Ian is not here today because he is actually out on the ground at Muriwai, lending his expertise to the work that's going on in that place. So I just wanted to acknowledge the amazing mahi that Ian's doing.
Kia ora, Rachel. Tēnā koutou katoa. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the impact on and offer our sympathies to everyone who's been affected by the events of the last couple of weeks, really, particularly last night. Approximately 20 experienced building inspectors, compliance officers and geotechnical engineers were deployed along with senior managers to Muriwai this morning to support Fire and Emergency New Zealand and police with the operation out there. After a review of the area by Urban Search and Rescue and supported by our 3 geotechnical engineers, police and FENS determined that the danger was too great from further slips. It was too high a risk and operations were stopped. Police have put in place an exclusion zone around a significant area in Muriwai. Police have alerted us that people are returning to dangerous properties in Muriwai, and that is of extreme concern to us. We're currently phoning all property owners that we can reach to advise of the danger and that they must stay out of those properties. We ask that people consider their own safety and please respect the exclusion zone in place. Once it's deemed safe and we get permission from police, we will bring our team back together to conduct rapid building assessments in Muriwai. In the meantime, our teams have been deployed to conduct rapid building assessments throughout Auckland in areas of high impact from last night's rain and wind, although slips, fallen trees and flooding is impacting our ability to get to some areas. As has been the case since the January 27th flooding, properties will continue to be fixed with red, yellow or white placards as determined by risk and structural assessments. Red placards require immediate evacuation of the property due to risk from structural instability or threat of slips. Yellow placards restrict access to a certain part of a property or allow residents time to collect belongings with appropriate risk mitigations in place. White means the property can be lived in but may need assessment by electricians or plumbers or the like. Rapid building assessments will continue, weather and safety allowing, over the coming days. Affected premises in Muriwai, Piha and Karikari will be assessed as soon as safe access is allowed. Thank you, Rachel.
I'll now just provide a brief update that we've received from Watercare. So Watercare is urging its Muriwai, Helensville and Wellsford customers to please reduce their water use immediately due to the water treatment plants being affected by power outages. Water can still be used for drinking and washing hands, but residents are asked to refrain from using washing machines or dishwashers or any unnecessary use of water at this time. Watercare advises that crews are working at pace to get them up and running, but disruption to the road access has made it more difficult to access these plants. They expect to have the Helensville water treatment plant up and running again by evening and will update on the other 2 plants in due course. And keeping to the theme of utilities, power update. On the topic of power outages have been widespread across the region with high winds continuing to cause problems. Counties Energy advises that as of 12 p.m, they have around 5,000 properties without power, with more outages expected over the course of the day. I will now hand over to Vector's Chief Operating Officer for Electricity, Gas and Fibre, Peter Ryan, to give an update on how their network is faring.
Thank you. Kia ora, everyone. I want to start by acknowledging it's been a very difficult couple of days for many communities across the North Island, with power outages adding to the stress of coping with this cyclone. I want to reassure families that our teams are doing all they can to get people back up and running as soon as is safely possible. As of 1 p.m, those without power stood at 44,000, and these are widespread outages across the Auckland region. Our crews are working tirelessly, but the ongoing severe gales are making it much harder to restore power to communities, with crews needing to stand down at times for their own safety. We continue to see the same pattern since the cyclone began, whereby we are fixing faults only for new faults to reoccur. So we expect the number of people without power to continue to fluctuate throughout the day. We know that other lines companies are experiencing similar conditions and challenges. To give you some examples of what our crews are dealing with, today one crew had to abandon a vehicle in rising floodwaters. In Piha, where trees have blocked roads, we are unable to access damaged equipment. And in the Warkworth, Wellsford and Snells Beach area, we are facing a complex scenario with the Dome Valley Road closed, multiple faults to deal with, difficulty accessing damaged equipment, and concerns around crew safety. Now, some families have had outages restored quickly. However, those in more rural areas should be prepared for several days without power. We hope to provide more detailed information later today about how long we expect it will take to restore different areas. So please bear with us while we work through this information. However, I must stress that at this stage, these are estimates. As I said earlier, what we are finding is some outages require multiple repairs in order to restore power. So while conditions are tough and damage is often complex, I want to assure you that we have plans in place. We have as many crews as possible working and a team of people who are committed to making sure families and businesses have power restored as soon as is safely possible. Please remember to stay well clear of fallen lines or damaged electrical equipment and to treat them as live at all times. If you or someone in your household is using medical equipment that relies on electricity, let your retailer know, for example, Mercury, Contact or Genesis, if you lose power. If there is an immediate threat to health, please contact your health provider or call 111. Thank you.
I'm now going to hand to Stacey Vanderputten, who's going to come and give us the latest on the road enclosures and our public transport network. Thanks, Stacey.
Kia ora koutou. Firstly, a thank you to the people of Tamariki Makaurau for heeding the advice and minimising travel across the network as the weather events continue and allowing our people to get out there and assess the safety of the transport network. Our road maintenance crews are working across Auckland to assess the damage caused to the region from the current weather events. Significant road closures remain in place across West and North Auckland, which have isolated the communities of Piha, Muriwai and Karikari and made Wellsford inaccessible from the south. Because of the extent of the damage, it is proving difficult for our road crews to even access some sites of slips and to carry out the proper inspections that are needed. Our teams are working closely with Auckland Emergency Management, Police and Defence to explore options for restoring some managed access to these communities, since it's not yet clear when roads will be able to be cleared and reopened fully. We appreciate how difficult this is for the communities to be isolated, so we want to assure residents that restoring some form of access is our top priority, even if we're not able to fully open roads for the time being. Across the whole Auckland region, there are approximately 80 roads that are either fully or partially closed currently, and that's a changing situation currently. Over the past 18 hours, Auckland Transport has received approximately another 206 calls from residents concerned about debris on roads or slips, and we're currently prioritising those in our list and our teams are attending to them. We have approximately 500 members of our roading crews out across the network right now to assess damage and clear the roads where possible. The most up-to-date information is always available on our website as new information comes to hand. So we do stress again to check at.govt.nz, and there is a banner at the top of the page which will take people to all the information they need to know. In terms of some key points to note about the transport network this afternoon, following a full network inspection carried out by Kiwi Rail this morning, train services will resume operating today on the Eastern, Western and Southern lines. That's going to happen at approximately 3 p.m. In terms of the Southern and the Eastern. We're still waiting confirmation of the Eastern line Western line, for full resumption. We will provide updates as that information comes to hand. It is likely that there will be speed restrictions in place for safety purposes, just to make sure that that operation runs smoothly and to a proper schedule. Rail replacement services will continue until that happens fully, and we'll keep customers updated as that information comes to hand. The rail replacement services that are part of the rail renewal program will continue. They're on the Onehunga line and the Southern line between Newmarket and Otahu. Scheduled bus services are running. There's some obvious detours and cancellations that have been necessary due to the safety and risk assessment of the network. Travel Planner has been updated with that information for customers. For the very small number of schools that are in class today, school bus services are operating. Although the Harbour Bridge is currently open, there is a possibility that the bridge will close at some stage today, depending on the wind conditions. If the Auckland Harbour Bridge does close, we will once again put detours in place for bus services which will travel between the city and the North Shore. There is information about these detours on the AT page. Ferry services are significantly disrupted today by the weather conditions, with some limited services running. Cancellations are in place for Gulf Harbour, Pine Harbour and Rakino services, with reduced sailings for the other services. In terms of our roads, obviously, as we've said, they are significantly disrupted today. There is a lot of debris out across the network, so if people do have to travel today, we advise to take a cautious approach and look out for debris across the road network as our teams go out and clean this up. Thank you.
We've also been provided an update from Auckland Airport. Auckland Airport is open and operating, including retail, dining, car parking and transport. Airline schedules may be disrupted for several days as operations gradually return to normal. Both international and domestic terminals are expected to be busy as travel resumes. Auckland Airport asks that only passengers with confirmed bookings on a flight scheduled to depart that day come to the airport. At times there may be delays in queuing, particularly if high winds make it unsafe for airline ground crew to handle and unload aircrafts. Auckland Airport recommends travellers pack any essential medication and a change of clothes and their carry-on baggage just in case their travel is disrupted midway through their journey. Travellers should check airline websites, travel apps or email for airline or travel agent updates before leaving for the airport, and monitor Auckland Airport social media channels for updates around airport operations. I'd now like to touch on our civil defence centres and shelters. Last night, around 113 people resided in our civil defence centres. This included some of those who were asked to evacuate from Normandy Road in Mount Eden, and others who made the decision to leave their homes for safety. Today we've been carrying out a thorough assessment of our 27 civil defence centres and shelters to determine what needs are in each of our communities. This will enable us to make the appropriate decisions in coming days to close centres where the need no longer exists so that we can divert resources to those that do. We remind people to keep an eye on the AEM website for the most up-to-date information, and that of course is aem.org.nz. We know that many people will have storm damage to their properties and will be looking for advice on how to clean up and remove material, including green waste and fallen branches and trees. A reminder that strong winds are still forecast for the rest of the day, and we ask that for safety reasons, you continue to securely store all household and green waste on your property until normal curbside collections resumes. Scheduled curbside rubbish, recycling and food scraps collections will start again tomorrow as part of your normal collection day cycle. If your normal collection day was cancelled yesterday or today and you cannot wait until your next collection date, you can take your waste up to one of the 15 participating transfer stations for free. So the key message there is if you missed yesterday or today, either hold on to your rubbish until your next scheduled collection, or if you do need to dispose of it, you can take it to a transfer station, as I said, for free. Our Waste Solutions team intends to restart the collection of flood damaged items from tomorrow. So that is flood damaged materials from the previous last month's flood event. If you have already logged a request for assistance or collection, or you need some help with that, and we have you on your list, we will get to you as soon as it is safe to do so. We appreciate your patience as we continue to work through these requests. I'm now going to hand over to Brett O'Reilly, Chief Executive of the Employers and Manufacturing Association, to give an update on the flood relief package.
Kia ora koutou katoa. We find ourselves once again going through a really difficult time when we know Auckland businesses and communities are suffering the ongoing after effects of the first floods almost a week and a half ago. I'm speaking to you today in my capacity as the chairperson of the Tamaki Makaurau Business Network, which is a joint industry association and public sector forum that has been working on solutions that help businesses the most and how they access them, including the central government funding announced last week. A key part of that funding and the program are back to work grants, which are being delivered by the Auckland Business Chamber, and they aim to support businesses to do exactly that, getting back to operating as usual. Additional support, accessible now, will also help with their ongoing recovery. The Back to Work grants are relevant for businesses with 1 to 20 employees. These are businesses that have been directly impacted, for example, having damage to property, to stock, and that haven't been able to trade. It's also for businesses that face significant cash flow issues, as they cannot operate as usual, including as a result of delays in insurance and repairs. It's also for businesses who were viable before the flooding and would continue to be after. And it's for businesses who commit to acting in line with employment law with regard to their employees. Specifically, the Back to Work grants cover 3 categories: up to $5,000 in grant funding for red or yellow stickered businesses, up to $2,000 of grant funding for other businesses that can demonstrate significant need, and $750 of grants for businesses that can demonstrate a moderate level of need as a result of the flooding. Applications for these grants can be made through aucklandchamber.co.nz or via 0800 005 605 from later this week. Today, we can support business owners' mental health and wellbeing through firststeps.nz, which can be accessed now, through the business helpline, which is being provided by the EMA on behalf of the Tamaki Makaurau Business Network. That number is 0800 500 362, and businesses can also join the online business community for free information, support and links to useful information. We'll update you as soon as we can on further details on how to access the Back to Work flood recovery payments. I should also make you aware that we've been on calls today with central government agencies in discussing the impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle, and we'll continue to work with them on potential additional assistance that will be provided as a result of the damage caused by that. Lastly, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the first responders, council and businesses who are working together to try and help with the recovery from the floods and Cyclone Gabrielle. Kia kaha, ngā mihi nui.
Thank you, Brett. So just now in wrap up, we're aware that there have been people who have found it very hard to connect with displaced friends and whānau today, made perhaps more difficult by cell phone towers being down in a number of locations. Anyone who is struggling to contact an employee, a friend or a loved one, please do keep trying through your usual personal channels. And just remember that some of those networks have been impacted but may be coming back up. So just keeping an eye on those providers. We understand that the New Zealand Police will be coming out with some further information about how they can assist with the connection with missing persons. It is also important to note that cellular issues can impact the effectiveness of our emergency mobile alert systems, which again reinforces the need to have a plan in place. If you have concerns at all for your safety, please do not wait to be told to leave. Warnings remain in place, and while the weather is starting to move on, there are still risks that we need to be aware of. We can expect to have heavy winds right throughout today. We ask that you keep up to date with the latest information on Auckland Emergency Management and social media channels. And we just want to thank all of those who are working incredibly hard to support all response efforts to Cyclone Gabrielle as this impact continues. Please check in on your loved ones and those around you. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you, everybody. I'll now take some questions if anyone has any. Todd, would you like to go first?
Question first.
Do you want to give me the question and then I can? Yep.
So, of the two Muriwai firefighters, an update on how the one in hospital is going, and also the nature of the contact and support you're giving to the family of the missing one.
So the question for those online was just an update on the status of the firefighter in hospital and just the support available to colleagues.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm unable to give you an update on the firefighter that is in hospital at this time. However, they are in the care of our hospital staff, and as soon as we have details that can be released, we will. As you are well aware, firefighters are a very tight-knit community and the communities that support us as well. So our welfare services are broad and in place for everybody who has been impacted in these incidents, Muriwai in particular. Fire and emergency has a number of different ways in which we do this, but first and foremost is the wishes of the family involved at this time. We are conscious that they have a desperate wait for news, and we'll be working with them as closely as we can at this time. I'm really also conscious that we have crews still responding right around the country at the moment, so their welfare needs will be supported as well. Thank you.
In relation to the incident yesterday, I think the first one would be when we had the slip, did they hit the truck as well? The fire truck that was there, and was the firefighter that was rescued treated in the surf club, and how long did it actually take to take him to hospital?
So there was two parts to that question. The first part was the incident at Muriwai, was that relating to the fire appliance being impacted? And the answer to that, I think, was yes. Yeah. And the second part to the question was the injured persons involved treated at the surf club or assisted at the surf club?
Details will still be emerging as to the finer timings of this incident. To the question itself, our firefighters were on scene, 2 in the house and the rest of the crew in the truck. The truck was also impacted by the landslide. However, the crew on site managed to call for help and all of our crews responded. When we rescued our first firefighter in the early hours of this morning, we were assisted greatly by New Zealand Defence Force and the teams on site to ensure that they were treated as soon as is practical and transported as soon as is practical. I am not able to provide you with details on timings. Those matters will come. Thank you.
So I just have one more for Steph. Would we be able to confirm if there was anyone else in the house at Muriwai at the time of that call-out?
So that question was there anybody else in the house at the time of the call-out?
Thank you. So in the Muriwai incident, there have been multiple houses impacted. At the time, details are still unclear as to whether the occupants in the impacted houses were in the house at that time. This is exactly part of the work that is being undertaken today with the assistance of other agencies, which is to give us a full picture of the amount of damage that is out there and to be assisting any forward planning. Thank you. Cheers.
And I might just take this opportunity, just a reminder again of the message that Craig gave, which is that a number of these properties are not safe for re-entry, and our teams are out on the ground trying to do that rapid building assessment, but the conditions are very difficult, so they may not have got to properties yet. In fact, they haven't got to most properties yet. So people should not be returning to any of the properties that were subject to the emergency mobile alert message last night, or in the vicinity of the property where the fire appliance was damaged. So they're actually two separate parts of Muriwai where these events happened, close but separate. So just again a reminder for people not to return to homes in those areas. It's really important that you stay out until that assessment work's been done, because our observation is that there is quite a lot of instability around that area.
Question for Craig.
Thank you.
So it's to describe the nature and the extent of the exclusion zone and what's going on inside it that makes it one?
So that question, for those of you online, was just what's the extent and nature of the exclusion zone at Muriwai and what makes it an exclusion zone, I guess?
Thank you for the question. I can't speak for the police. I haven't been out there, but I understand the exclusion zone is quite significant. It was shared that there is still a lot of earth movement in that vicinity, as Rachel's already described. It is significantly dangerous. So police are taking all steps, obviously, to maintain safety, working to a wider boundary than a narrower boundary. But I'm sorry, I can't give you the locales.
But just adding to that too, some of the cordons in terms of vehicular access, of course, are at natural control points on the roading network where it makes sense to stop people from entering the area that we want them to stay away from.
I was just going to ask, for those, what's the advice for those in regions there's no comms, there's no phone, there's no internet to be able to reach? We have done a call around and some radios have been sold out in some stores. What's the best advice for those to prepare in case they lose this contact?
Yes, so I mean, our key message is that people should be prepared for further disruption, both to power. Oh, the question was, what can people be doing to prepare themselves for some of this disruption around the cell phone networks, the power outages, and really people should be prepared, particularly in the rural communities, as we've heard, to be out of power potentially for up to several days. So that means really thinking about what you can do to be safe in place. So, you know, for some people that might mean going out to restock on different supplies, or it may be perhaps going to stay with friends and whānau, but just thinking about what your plan is to be out of power potentially or unable to use cell phone devices for several days. So, you know, really our key advice is to just think about that and make yourself a plan if you haven't already.
My question was for Craig as well. I was just wondering if there's an update on preliminary numbers of red, yellow and white placarded houses.
Have you got that information in
the
front of you?
numbers.
You got that? Okay, the question was an update on the red, yellow and white placarded houses.
So as of 8 a.m. this morning, we'd done 5,370 assessments. There were 797 red placards and 1,723 yellow placards. Obviously not picking up on, we haven't done anything today pretty much. Well, those figures of today don't feature.
Thanks, Craig. Any other questions? Time for one or two more? No. Thank you, everybody, and thank you again for helping to share messages out to our communities. We do appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.